Greetings, one and all, to the most cursed, most cringiest corner of the internet. A YouTube channel content creator actively alienating everyone in both the analog and digital world. Well, welcome and good evening, you wonderful dice of all alignments. I am Lunar D8. We're reading The Tragedy of X, Ellery Queen, Act 3, Scene 4, en route to New York, Saturday, October 10, 3:15 a.m. District Attorney Bruno, Inspector Thum, and a small army of men climbed into police cars and roared away from the Teaneck siding in the direction of New York. For a long time, the two men sat without speaking, immersed in a welter of spinning thoughts. The black Jersey countryside skimmed by. Bruno opened his mouth. Bah! And the words flew out soundlessly. Swallowed up in the thunder of the cutout, Thum yelled, "Hey!" And they put their heads together. Bruno shouted into the inspector's ear, "How do you figure Lane knows who killed DeWitt?" "The same way, I suppose," cried Thum, "that he knew who killed Longstreet and Wood. If he knew." "Oh, he knows all right. The old son of a gun inspires confidence somehow. Can't figure it out myself. Easy enough to see how his mind works. He probably figures that Longstreet and DeWitt have been on the spot from the beginning. Both of them. Wood's murder came between as a result of circumstances to shut him up. That means," Bruno nodded, "that means that the motive for these crimes goes way back, maybe." "Sure looks like it." Thum swore fluently as the driver of the car took a bump in the road without touching his brake. "So Lane says there won't be any more murders, see? Longstreet and DeWitt rubbed out, and there's an end to it." "Feel sorry for that poor old devil," muttered Bruno half to himself. The same thought was in their minds. DeWitt, in some as yet unseen way, sacrificed. They sat in silent communion as the car rushed on. After a time, Thum took his hat off and pounded his forehead. Bruno gaped. "What's the matter? Feel sick?" "Trying to figure out the damaged finger sign DeWitt left." "Oh, it's cuckoo, Bruno. Plain cuckoo. Can't make heads or tail of it." "How do you know DeWitt left it?" demanded the district attorney. "Maybe it doesn't mean anything, just an accident. You don't believe that accident? Hell, did you see me try putting my fingers in that position? Took a lot of strength to keep them overlapped for even 30 seconds. And it's impossible, I'd say, for the fingers to have got there together in a spasm, Bruno." Schilling had the same idea, or he wouldn't have made me experiment. "Say, listen," Inspector shifted in the leather seat to glare suspiciously at the district attorney. "I thought you were sort of impressed by that evil eye crack." Bruno smiled sheepishly. "Well, the more I think about it, the more I'm inclined to dismiss it. It just can't be. It's too fantastic. Isn't real, by God." Terrible at turning pages, especially with one hand. "Hard to figure out, all right. Then again, who can tell? Let's suppose, mind you, Thum, I'm not saying it, I believe it." I get you. Well, let's suppose those overlapping fingers did signify the protection sign against the evil eye. Might as well take all the possibilities into consideration. All right, DeWitt died instantly on being shot. One thing sure, then the sign must have been made deliberately by DeWitt and before he was shot. Murderer might have set DeWitt's fingers that way after DeWitt was dead, said Thum in a disagreeable voice, as I said before. "Oh, right," cried Bruno. "The Bruno didn't leave any sign on the other two. Why on this one?" "All right, have it your way," shouted Thum. "I was only acting true to form, detective, examining all possibilities and all that kind of junk." Bruno paid no attention. If DeWitt left that sign deliberately, hell, he knew his murderer. All right, and wanted to leave a clue to his murderer's identity. "So far, so good," yelled Thum. "Elementary, my dear Bruno." "Oh, shut up." "On the other hand," continued the district attorney, "about this evil eye business, DeWitt wasn't superstitious. Told you himself he wasn't. That means, say, Thum." I get you, cried Inspector, sitting up abruptly. "You mean that DeWitt left the sign to indicate his murderer was superstitious? By golly, that begins to sound like something jibes with DeWitt, too. Split-second thinker. He was quick on the trigger. Keen businessman. "Do you think Lane has considered that?" asked Bruno thoughtfully. "Lane?" The inspector's excitement subsided as if it had been doused with ice-cold water. His thick fingers bruised his jaw. "Well, now to think about it, maybe the idea isn't so hot after all. That is goddamn superstition business." Bruno sighed. 5 minutes later, Thum said suddenly, "What the hell is a genitor?" "Possessor of the evil eye. Neapolitan term, I think. They lapsed into gloomy silence as the car hurtled on. Scene 5. The DeWitt House in West Englewood, Saturday, October 10, 3:40 a.m. West Englewood was fast asleep under a frosty moon when a large police touring car passed through the village and took a side road lined with decaying trees. 2 state troopers on motorcycles flanked the car. Behind it came another and smaller car filled with detectives. The cavalcade came to a stop before the driveway leading through the lawns to DeWitt's house. From the large touring car emerged Jean DeWitt with Kit Lord, Franklin Ahern, Louis Imperial, Lionel Brooks, and Drury Lane. All were silent. The troopers cut their motors, pulled the machines back on their stands, and sat their saddles idly, puffing at cigarettes. The detectives swarmed from the smaller automobile and surrounded the party. "All of you into the house," said one, and with an air of authority, District Attorney Cole's orders to keep you together. Ahern protested. He lived nearby, he said, and saw no reason for spending the remainder of the night in the DeWitt house. Lane hung back as the others straggled up the walk to the portico. The detective with the authoritative air shook his head. Another man stepped Ahern's side. Ahern shrugged and followed the others. Lane, smiling faintly, proceeded along the dark walk in Ahern's wake. The detectives trudged behind. They were admitted by half-dressed Jorgens, who stared at them in bewilderment. No one vouchsafed? I have never seen that word before either. An explanation. The party, followed doggedly by the detectives, went into the large colonial sitting room, dropping into chairs with varying expressions of hopelessness and fatigue. Jorgens, buttoning himself up with one hand, lit electric lamps with the other. Drury Lane sat down with a sigh of relief, nursing his stick and watching the others with bright eyes. Jorgens, however, hovered over Jean DeWitt. The girl was sitting on a sofa encircled by Lord's arm. The butler said timidly, "I beg your pardon, Miss Jean." She murmured yes, in a voice so strange that the old man took a step backwards. But he said, "Has anything happened? These men, I beg your pardon, but where is Mr. DeWitt?" Lord said gruffly, "Oh, go away, Jorgens." The girl said clearly, "He's dead, Jorgens, quite dead." Jorgens' face went ashen. He remained in the same stooping attitude like a man entranced. Then he glanced about uncertainly as if to corroborate this appalling intelligence, saw only averted faces or stony eyes from which all emotion had been drained by the remorseless events of the night. Without a word, he turned to go. The detective in charge blocked his ways. "Where's Mrs. DeWitt?" The old butler regarded him blankly out of bleared, rheumy eyes. "Mrs. DeWitt? Mrs. DeWitt?" "Yes, come on, where is she?" Jorgens stiffened up. "Upstairs asleep, I think, sir." "Was she here all evening?" "No, sir. No, sir, I think not." "Where'd she go?" "I'm afraid I don't know, sir." "When did she get in?" "I was asleep, sir, when she came in. She had evidently forgotten her key, for she rang until I came down." Well, she came in about an hour and a half ago, I should judge." "Sir, don't you know exactly?" "No, sir." "Just a minute." The detective turned to Jean DeWitt, who had sat up during this conversation, listening almost with eagerness. The detective seemed puzzled by this peculiar expression on her face. He said with a clumsy attempt at graciousness, "I guess, would you want to tell Mrs. DeWitt what happened, miss? She'll have to know, and besides, I want to talk to her about District Attorney Cole's orders." "I tell her?" Jean threw her head back and laughed hysterically. "I tell her?" Lord shook her gently, murmuring in her ear. The wildness fled from her eyes, and she shuddered. She said in a half-whisper, "Jorgens, call Mrs. DeWitt down here." The detective said eagerly, "Never mind, I'll get her myself. Here you. Show me where her room is." Jorgens shuffled out of the room, followed by the detective. No one spoke. Ahern rose and began to pace the floor. Imperial, his coat still on, bundled it more securely about him. "I think," said Drury Lane amiably, "it would be wise to light a fire." Ahern stood stock still, looking around the room. He shivered suddenly as if he had just felt a chill in the air. He glanced about in a helpless way, hesitated, then went to the fireplace, knelt and with trembling hands occupied himself in starting a fire. A little heap of logs crackled. After a moment, firelight leaped along the walls. When he had the fire going to his satisfaction, Ahern rose, dusted his knees, and resumed his pacing. Imperial took his coat off. Brooks, buried in the depths of an armchair in a far corner, hitched the chair closer to the fire. They all raised their heads suddenly. A confusion of voices floated through the doorway and the warming air. Stiffly, unnaturally, they held their heads that way, watching, waiting for something to happen, in the curiously detached manner of statuary. Then Mrs. DeWitt glided into the sitting room, followed by the detective and the hesitating, still dazed Jorgens, her gliding motion unnatural as their manner, unreal as the tempo of a dream, and nevertheless released them from the spell of the horror of the evil night. They relaxed. Imperial rose and made a formal little bow. Ahern grunted, tossing his head. Lord's arm tightened, and Jean's shoulders. Brooks went to the fire. Only Drury Lane remained in the same pose. A man handicapped by deafness, head cocked alertly, and eyes sharp for the slightest move that might be significant of sound. Fern DeWitt was clothed in an exotic dressing gown, hurriedly wrapped about her nightdress, her hair still gleaming. Black streamed over her shoulders. She was more beautiful now than in the light of day. The lacquer was stripped from her face, and the firelight softened the marks of age. She paused uncertainly, her eyes much like Jorgens, and looked around. When they came to Jean, they contracted oddly, and she crossed the room to bend over the girl's exhausted body. Jean, she whispered, I'm so. The girl replied in a crystal voice, without raising her head or looking at her stepmother. Please go away. Fern DeWitt recoiled as if Jean had slapped her. Without another word, she turned to leave the room. The detective, who had been standing behind her, watching closely, barred her way. A couple of questions first, Mrs. DeWitt. She stopped helplessly. Imperial hurried forward with a chair, and she sank into it, staring at the fire. The detective cleared his throat in the heavy, palpable silence. What time did you get in tonight? She sucked in her breath. Why, you don't answer the question. A few minutes after 2? That is, about 2 hours ago. Yes. Where were you? Just driving. Driving? The detective's voice was crude with suspicion. Anyway with you? I was alone. What time did you leave the house? A long time after dinner, about 7:30. I took my own car and drove. Her voice trailed away, and the detective waited patiently. She moistened her dry lips and began again. I drove to the city after a time, and I found myself in the cathedral, St. John the Divine, on Amsterdam Avenue and 110th Street. Yes. I parked my car and went in, just sat there for a long time thinking. What's the idea, Miss DeWitt? Demanded the detective in a rough tone. Do you mean to tell me that you went clean to uptown New York just to sit in church for a couple hours? When did you leave the cathedral? Oh, what's the difference? Her voice rose to a shriek. What in the world is the difference? Do you think I killed him? You do. I know you do. All of you sitting here this way, watching me, judging me. She began to weep hopelessly, her magnificent shoulders heaving. What time did you leave the cathedral? She sobbed a little and then choked back the tears and said brokenly, about 10:30 or 11 o'clock, I don't remember. Then what did you do? I just drove and drove and drove. How'd you get back to Jersey? By the 42nd Street ferry. The detective whistled, stared at her, came all the way downtown in the heavy New York traffic again. Why? Why didn't you come across by the 125th Street ferry? She said nothing. Come on now, said the man brutally. You've got some explaining to do. Explaining? Her eyes were dull. I have nothing to explain. I don't know why I came downtown. I was just driving, thinking. Yeah, thinking, he glared. Now what about? She rose, draping her gown about her. I think you are carrying this just a bit too far. Certainly my thoughts are my own. Let me pass, please. I am going to my room. The detective stepped before her, and she stopped short, and the color fading from her cheeks. No, you don't, he began. When Drury Lane said pleasantly, really, I think Mrs. DeWitt is perfectly right. She is under a strain, and it would be only kindness to question further if it is necessary in the morning. The detective screwed his eyes at Lane, coughed, stepped aside. All right, sir, he growled. He added grudgingly, excuse me, lady. Fern DeWitt disappeared, and again the party lapsed into apathy. At 4:15, Mr. Drury Lane might have been observed at a curious business. He was alone in the library of the DeWitt house. His Iverness was thrown over a chair. His tall, grim, trim figure. I am starting to pass out. paced off the room methodically, eyes roving. Hands prying and searching. In the center of the room was a large walnut desk, carved in old. Lane went through the drawers one by one, sorting papers, examining records and documents. Apparently he was dissatisfied because he left the desk, and for the third time turned to a wall safe. He tried the knob again. The safe was locked. He turned away and slowly, carefully went through the tier upon tier of books, looking between shelves and volumes, opening a book here and there. When he had completely examined the books, he stood musing. His bright eyes strayed to the wall safe again. He went to the door of the library, opened it, and peered about. One of the detectives was lounging in the hall. The man looked about quickly. Is the butler still downstairs? I'll see. The detective walked away and returned shortly with a shuffling Jorgens. Yes, sir. Drury Lane leaned against the jamb of the library door. Jorgens, old fellow, do you know the combination of the library safe? Jorgens started. I? No, sir. Does Mrs. DeWitt know it, or Miss DeWitt? I don't think so, sir. Odd, said Lane pleasantly. The detective was slouching off down the hall. And how is that, Jorgens? Well, sir, Mr. DeWitt, well, the butler seemed at a loss. It's a queer, sir. But Mr. DeWitt for years has kept that safe sort of to himself. There's a bedroom safe upstairs in which Mrs. DeWitt and Mr. DeWitt and Miss DeWitt keep their jewels, but this one is in the library. I think only he and Mr. Brooks, his attorney, knew the combination. Brooks! Drury Lane was thoughtful. Will you have him come here, please? Jorgens moved away. When he returned, it was with Lionel Brooks, gray, blonde hair tousled, eyes red and sleepless. Want me, Mr. Lane? Yes, I understand that only you and DeWitt knew the combination of the library safe, Mr. Brooks. An alert look swam into Brooks's eyes. May I have it, please? The lawyer stroked his chin. A rather unusual request, Mr. Lane. I don't know that ethically I have the right to give you the combination, and legally this places me in a peculiar position. You see, the combination was given to me by DeWitt and a long time ago. He told me that he didn't want a record kept about the house, and everything should happen to him. He preferred that the safe be accessible only through official channels. You amaze me, Mr. Brooks, murmured Lane. Under the circumstances, I am more determined than ever to open the safe. You know, of course, that I possess the requisite authority. Would you transmit the combination to the district attorney? He was smiling, but his eyes probed the muscular contractions of the lawyer's jaws. If it's the will you want to see, began Brooks weakly, that's really an entirely official matter. But it isn't the will, Mr. Brooks. By the way, are you aware of the safe's contents? There must be something precious inside to warrant all of this mystery. Oh, no. I've always suspected that there was something queer inside, but of course I never presumed to ask DeWitt. I think, Mr. Brooks, said Lane in quite another tone, that you had better give me the combination. Brooks hesitated, averted his eyes, then with a shrug he murmured a series of numerical symbols. Lane watched his lips gravely, nodded, and without another word retreated into the library, shutting the door in Brooks's face. The old actor hurried across the library to the safe. He manipulated the dial for some time. When the heavy little door swung open, he paused, expectantly examining its interior without disturbing anything. 15 minutes later, Mr. Drury Lane slammed the door of the safe shut, twirled the dial, and returned to the desk. In his hand was a small envelope. Or do you guys say envelope or envelope? Lane sat down in the desk chair and studied the face of the envelope. It was addressed in longhand to John DeWitt, was postmarked Grand Central Station, New York City, and had gone through the General Post Office on the June 3rd of the current year. Lane turned the envelope over. There was no return address. Carefully, he inserted his fingers into the ragged end of the envelope and extracted a single sheet of common notebook paper. Notepaper. Like the envelope, it was written in script. The ink had been blue. It bore a date at the top of the sheet, June 2nd. It opened with the abrupt salutation, Jack. The message itself was laconic. June 2nd, Jack. This is the last time you will hear from me by letter. Every dog is his day. Mine will come soon. Get ready to pay. You may be first. The letter was signed without benefit of conventional closure, Martin Stops.